San Francisco.
All right, you guys, this is episode 37 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it. I know it's been a while since I dropped episode 36, but a lot has happened since then. Sometimes, like I said, man, sometimes things outside of YouTube happen, and it is what it is. Anyway, since I dropped episode 36, I've dropped a couple lives, and some of you guys have jumped in the comments, I'm assuming from Southern California, and basically let me know that Slick passed away. That was the last incident that I had got into in episode 36. Slick was the last individual that I had went out to the yard and got into it with. And I don't give a fuck if he's an adversary or not. He's somebody that I respect, somebody that went out there, did his thug dizzle. And with that said, I send my condolences to Slick, to him and his family. So anyways, from that point on, after I got into it with Slick, I told you guys that I wasn't really sure about how the walk alone was going to work. I wasn't sure when they could implement that, if it had to be when I went back to ICC or if they could do it at any time in between. But I found out. I went to my 115 hearing. I pled guilty thinking that I was going to be able to go right back out. And bam, that's when the lieutenant smacked me and said, you were being put on walk alone. And that was something that got affirmed the next time that I went to committee. So basically from that point on, I went on walk alone. I wasn't able to go back out to the yard no more from that point on. I wish I had more stories where I could tell you guys that I went out there another 20 or 30 times, but it didn't happen. That was the thing. After so many times that you went out and got off, eventually they were going to put you on walk alone, and either they'd ship you out or you would stay on walk. If you were short, you'd stay on walk alone and you'd eventually parole. So that's what happened to me. I stayed there until I paroled. I never again got to ever go back out to a group yard. That would later change. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. I'm going to get into the investigative parts of what happened, how this all got blown open, and some of the officers that were known as the whistleblowers. You had two officers, Steve Riggs and another officer named Caruso. Trying to remember I think his name was Richard Caruso. Those are the two officers that basically became known as the whistleblowers. They're the ones that got a massive investigation started on a lot of the homicides that were occurring over there. And that's basically what happened from that point on. You know, walk alone was fucked up. I tell you guys all the time about how I wasn't feeling Corcoran. Corcoran was a fucked up prison, not just because of the SHU wars, but for me, it was just the whole get down, just how Corcoran was designed, how the cells were, how they ran the program, how they ran yard, everything about it. I just hated. I hated Corcoran. The thing about, the thing that was different about Pelican Bay, I mean, it was like night and day. Everything from, there was that respect on the tiers that I always talk about between us and the adversaries. We used to converse with the Aryan Brotherhood. We used to converse with the Mexican Mafia, with the Nazi lowriders. We had that understanding, and we all respected each other on that level because we were soldiers. We were going out. We were doing what we had to do. So there was that respect. When it came to dropouts, we stuck together. The actives, we stuck together as one, in theoretically, and nobody fucked with that with the dropouts, because these were guys that, for whatever reason, they were no longer with us. They were no longer loyal to their organization, and they weren't participating in this war. So they were looked at as trash. They were looked at as anybody that was over there that was non-active. They were dead cells. They were communicated by nobody. The Sureños, even though they're not our politics. We gave the active Sureños the respect of not fucking with their trash, not fucking with their dropouts. And they did the same. If there was Norteños on the tier, they wouldn't converse with them out of respect for us that were still active. Whether it was our internal politics that got them in that situation, or whether it was because they did something such as cooperating, or they had a weird case or something like that. It didn't matter. They were no longer on the home team. So, that was another thing. But the two things that stood out about these two prisons is not just the environment, the vibe between Pelican Bay and Corcoran, but just the way that it's set up. It's like Pelican Bay, everything is the pods are self-sustaining. You have everything that you need in that pod. They never slammed us down because of any fog line or any bullshit like that. The yard, the shower, everything is right there in the pod. You could stay in the pod and never go nowhere for years and you'd be okay, unless you had to go to medical or something like that. You had your yard was in the back of the pod. It was right there. It was just a square concrete box. Your shower, you had a lower and an upper shower, and then you had obviously your cells on the upper and lower tier. So, the way it was set up, it was just, Pelican Bay was designed, it was designed to also break you. But for a lot of us that were mentally strong, Pelican Bay, I could do years standing on my head. I got used to being antisocial. I got used to being an introvert. That's what it does to you. It creates all these different character flaws in you. These mental things like PTSD, schizophrenia, just all the things that I've talked about in the past. But anyway, so for the next 90 days, all I could basically do from that point on is just sit back, watch, listen, and pay attention to everything that was going on. Watch some of the other Norteños that would eventually come through on the tier, and it was their time. It was their time to go out there, watch them, assist them, get at them, let them know this is what we used to do. This is what, worked for us. And maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to try that, to try to lace them up, to try to get them mentally prepared and to keep them motivated. Corcoran weighed on you. If you were weak, if you weren't mentally strong, it would weigh on you. Some guys will go out once, twice, maybe 3 times, and after a while they get discouraged. Man, fuck that. I'm not going out no more. I'm cool. I go out, I get shot. There's nothing to gain from this. It's easy to allow that to set in. It's easy to allow that, if you're weak like that, those kind of things will start setting in. I used to keep my mind occupied. I used to read. I used to work out. I used to write letters. I used to try to draw, whatever I would need to do in order to keep my mind busy. That's what I did. I never used to think about that stuff. I wouldn't write home and cry to the family about, hey, this is what's going on over here. I'm almost dying every day. I didn't expose them to that world. I let them know that, there was some things that I was going through in Corcoran, but that I'd be home. That Corcoran, there was a lot of shit that was going on. They'd probably eventually hear about it, because I knew that there was eventually going to be an investigation. It was coming. Everybody knew it. There were too many people that were getting killed. It was fun in the beginning when, people were going out and we were getting our squab on, and, they were betting. Everybody guys like to see that type of shit, that blood sport, a good old fashioned fist fight, some fisticuffs. It was all good in the beginning. And, as gang members, we didn't give a fuck. That's what we signed up for. So we were with it. But when people started getting killed, that's when they started to go too far. I've used the term, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, and that's what it was. And the thing about it was, a lot of these gunners, they developed that mentality where, they see one gunner get away with killing somebody, and then, they started growing in confidence about, grabbing that Mini 14, and they want to shoot somebody. It was almost like getting notches under their belt. That's what started happening. a lot of Norteños got killed over there. A lot of Africanos started getting killed. And again, I'm not over here picking and choosing sides, but I'm telling you, the numbers can't lie. When you look at who got killed, who were getting shot, we were getting targeted. The Norteños were getting targeted. Why? Because I explained to you guys why. We were the aggressors. And I never had an opportunity to talk to an Imero, somebody that was active over there in the SHU wars. Like right now, I mean, obviously when it was going on, I got it, some of them over there, but that kind of dialogue wasn't on the table. We didn't talk about the political stuff behind it. But I would like to know, I'd like to get somebody on this channel that was a part of the SHU wars. And what I would want to know, what I would ask them was, because like I told you guys before, the Norteños were the aggressors. We were the ones that were going out there and were rushing these guys. And it wasn't because these guys they didn't want no smoke. It wasn't because they were cowards. It wasn't because we were stronger, we were superior, they were weaker. It wasn't nothing like that. When I look back at it in retrospect now and some of the things that I've heard and I've seen, I think a lot of it was strategic. The Mexican mafia knew, and they were filtering this down to the Sureños and to their camaradas that let these guys be the aggressors. These are the dummies that are getting shot. They're the ones that are rushing us. Go out there, throw a handball, walk a couple laps, do your thing. Let them come to you, because at the end of the day, when the gunner starts shooting, they're the ones that are going to get hit because they are the aggressors. So I'd like to have that conversation with somebody. I would like to know if that really was a tactic that they had implemented. If this was something that they were doing because they knew that this was gonna happen. That we'll let the Norteños and the NF, and we'll let those guys, we'll let them get shot. We're still gonna get our money, but they're the ones that are gonna get targeted. So I don't know. It's something that I've wondered about, and it makes sense. Like I said, I've heard things and I see things, and when I look back on it, it makes a lot of sense, because when I was there, I couldn't figure that out. Like, what the fuck are these dudes doing? Why are they in the back of the yard? Why are they playing handball? Why is this dude in the shower? These dudes are like, they're waiting to see how we're gonna react to them, and then they're gonna get off after, but they're letting us bring it to them. So it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So anyways, for the next 90 days, I go to committee, and I ended up hearing another speech when I go in there. Well, Mr. Mendoza, you can't play right with other inmates. It seems like you're still in that pattern or that mindset of going out and assaulting other gang members. So with that being said, since you can't get along and you have a consistent pattern of fighting, we're going to keep you on walk alone. Basically, they affirmed what the lieutenant had already told me. So I stayed on walk alone, and walk alone's fucked up. I told you guys it was mandatory. I mean, I would have went anyway, even if the homies weren't pushing that policy of, if the guys that were on walk alone, it was mandatory to go to yard, even though we're not going out with any adversaries. When it comes to Norteños, when it comes to the NF and those policies, any movement is mandatory, because you always have an opportunity to see something. If you stay locked in the cell, you're not going to see shit in the cell. But the way we used to look at it, the way the NF looks at it, the NR, is anytime you go out of your cell and you go, whether it's to medical, whether it's to the law library, whether it's to a yard, you see things. You have an opportunity to see things that you definitely wouldn't have seen if you hadn't went on that movement. So any type of movement was mandatory. I would have still went to the yard, even if it wasn't mandatory, because that's just me. That's the way that I was educated. That's the way that I was taught from all the way back from San Quentin in 1989. Any kind of yard, anything was mandatory. There wasn't nobody out there, but you never know. They could have put somebody out there on an accident. And if I don't go out, I'll never encounter that opportunity. So anyways, there was a lot of eating my breakfast on the yard at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was fucked up. Eventually, I got smart, took a little piece of cardboard out there, or I just took the milk carton and made a little scoop so that I could eat my fucking oatmeal and shit. You had to find ways to improvise, because they wouldn't give you a spork or a spoon or anything like that. You're going to get your breakfast in the morning, you're going to get some cornflakes, or you're going to get some hot cereal, and you're going to have to eat it with your bare hands, or you're going to have to improvise. Find something like I did. I pound my milk, and then I took a little square piece from the milk carton, made a little scoop, and used that to eat. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of eating breakfast at 4 o'clock on the yard, a lot of cold ass mornings out there. All the walk-alongs were the ones that would go out at all hours of the night. And I'm telling you, there was like a rotation. A lot of times you would never get to go to yard, because as more time went on, more and more people got put on walk-along. A lot of the time that I spent over there was writing, facilitating reports that were, everything was going to Big Chente over there at that time. They had moved Big Chente to an area that was first known as, what was it called? It was known as why isn't it coming into me right now? Bedrock. It was known as Bedrock, but eventually Bedrock, it became obsolete. They shut it down. Bedrock was a place where they would send somebody that was on walk alone because they were fighting, and they'd send them over there, take all their property, take all their privileges. They didn't have nothing coming. As time went on, more and more people got put on walk alone, because more and more people were going out, were getting off. So eventually they were like, we're out of room over here. There's no more room to put people in Bedrock. So they shut it down, and just walk-alongs were everywhere. Wherever you were at, you were on walk-alone, and that's what it was. But everything was going to Pinky at that time. Now, there was a lot of good homies that were coming through there. You know, I've mentioned some. Bad Boy from Corcoran was over there. You had Diablo from Tracy was over there. You had my boy Eddie Roach from San Francisco was over there with another homeboy named Tomahawk. They were going out. They got off with a couple of medals over there. I believe I mentioned that in one of my prior episodes. I don't remember exactly who right now, but there were a lot of homies that were going out, and a lot of homies were getting shot. And as time went on, as with everything, in the very beginning, there was no policies. The only policies were that you were required to go out to the yard and you were required to engage. But as time went on and we learned more about the setup and about what we were up against, so I would have thought they would have changed some of the policies based on the things that were happening there. However, it never changed as far as us being the aggressors. It either never occurred to nobody, or it was something that they wanted us to continue to be the aggressors regardless. But this was something that, you know, even when I was there, I don't know why it's obvious, but it never occurred to me. Like, that's why we're fucking the ones that keep getting shot, because we're the aggressors. But, you know, make no mistake about it, though, there were some Southsiders that would stay at the line. Slick was one of them. There were a lot of the Woods that would post up right there on the line. Just there were some that didn't, but at the time it didn't make no sense to me. So anyways, like I was saying, that's all I could really do for the next 90 days until I would eventually parole, is to just sit back, watch, pay attention to what was going on, make notes, and continue to, you know, to communicate that everything that was going on in our building to Chente. Not only that, but, you know, like I said, a lot of the homies that were coming in and that were going out to help them, a lot of them were coming in and they didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that we dealt with. Like, they didn't have to come into a section and not know who's who. As soon as they come in and we find out who they were, hey, homie, I'm gonna get at you, make something, make a line. As soon as you get situated, I'm gonna get at you. And I let them know the whole schematics of the tier, who's around them, how it works, what to look for, some of the things that I learned, everything, all the way down to Post up, be on your door, and watch these individuals go out to the yard. When they get up there to the front of the gate, watch not only watch their body language, but try to see if they're going to make eye contact with you. See if their eyes shift towards yourself. Because if they do, 9 times out of 10, that means, or it could mean, those are the ones that you're going to go out with, or those are the ones that they're going to send at you. So, I let them know about things like that. I let them know that, for me, I would never give anybody the time of day to ever get the drop on me. I'm not going to let somebody go out there and throw a handball, or to get in the shower, or engage in whatever their exercises and then go get at them after. Hell no. I'm going straight from the gate, from point A to point B. I'm making a beeline. If they're not saying nothing, and so, some of the other things that I would let these guys know is, is no matter how fucking pissed off that you get, whether you go out there, whether you win, whether you lose, do not engage in trash talking. Don't get into it with them. If they say something to you, keep it professional. Don't say nothing back, because when their adrenaline stops pumping, and their jets cool down, and they get back up in the cell and they think about it, they're gonna respect you. They're gonna respect you. Hey, that that's a solid motherfucker right there. I broke character and I started running my mouth, but that dude didn't say nothing. Yet every time he's ready, yard, he's ready and he comes out. So you can't help but to respect your adversaries when they're conducting themselves like professionals. And that's something that we always promoted to the youngsters. And that's all I could really do at that point, was give them a heads up about a lot of the things that I learned, and about other things that other homies had told us when we got there, and just some of the tactics, all the tactics that I've explained to you guys, getting your way around whoever it is that you're fighting with, and making it so that their back is to the gunner. Also, watching the gunner, listening to the different guns, and knowing what that Bertha sounds like when they fucking pop a new canister in that Bertha, and knowing the difference from when they rack that Mini 14. Those are things that you gotta know. You gotta learn how those different guns sound when they rack them. That's something that I learned in Susanville. I learned that shit in Susanville when I went through similar fights over there. I knew the difference. I wouldn't even have to look. I knew the difference from the Bertha when they racked that canister, from when that Mini 14 got chambered. I knew that motherfucker. And when that Mini 14 got chambered, I knew it was time to hit the fucking deck. Providing that the individual I was fighting with hit the deck first. I would never prone out, and that's something else I let these individuals know. I had never proned out before whoever I was getting them up with, before they started to get down. I would let them start to get down first. Once I seen that they were done and they started to get down, then I would go down. I've heard other homies where they got shot at, they heard that gun, they hit the deck, and then they end up getting kicked in the face or something like that. So, but not only that, that was something that was being pushed as far back as Quentin, when the homies were talking about Corcoran SHU over there in Quentin. We don't hit the deck first. We let the adversaries hit the deck. We let the opposition hit the deck first. Once they're done, and we know they're done, and that threat is no longer a threat, then you prone out and you get down. So anyway, while I'm there, I'm hearing other homies that are getting killed. I'm hearing about Africanos that are getting killed. And like I said before, the COs, they're the biggest gossipers over there. They're the ones that facilitate all the information from all the buildings. They'll come over and, you know, they're on their cell phones texting about it. They're talking about it. They're talking about it when they're serving lunch. It's almost like they want to come over. They're the ones that do all the gossiping, though. They're the ones that pass on all the information. So, you know, I was hearing about it. Now, there were two officers over there that basically there were two former Marines that didn't agree with what was going on. And, you know, it was obvious that this was a blood sport. It was obvious that there was something that was happening in Corcoran that shouldn't have been happening, as far as from, you know, their perspective, as far as being, you know, an officer, that these guys were engaged in unethical practices of allowing inmates, rival inmates, to go out there on the yard to fight. And, you know, that was bad enough. And maybe if people weren't getting killed, it would have been okay. Maybe they wouldn't have said nothing. When people started getting killed, you know, people's sons, people's fathers, people's uncles, you know, somebody's kid, that's when it went too far. That's when these guys apparently started to speak on it. They started to address it. They started to speak up, you know, amongst their own, and like, hey, this ain't right. And one of them, being a sergeant, you know, being one of the authority figures over there, had tried to minimize the violence himself by, you know, telling them to stop putting rival gang members, stop housing them in close proximity to each other, to stop it. And that shit would only happen while they were working. As soon as their shift was over and they weren't there, you know, the other officers that were all in cahoots, that were with this shit, they would do it anyway. So like I said, you had two officers. You had Officer Richard Caruso and Stephen Riggs. They became the two officers who would literally blow this investigation open. They were the two that, you know, had started to see that things were starting to get out of control in Corcoran, and they were the ones that were trying to bring attention to it. But like I said, both of these officers were former Marines, and I'm going to explain to you why. That had a lot to do with, you know, why they were the two that came forward. I'm sure there was probably other former military guys that worked there as correctional officers as well. However, maybe these were just two former Marines that took unethical practices to heart. So these two basically, you know, they felt like at the point where, you know, it wasn't after the first time somebody got shot, wasn't maybe the second time, but after like the fifth, sixth, seventh individual that got killed over there, and people that were just getting, you know, shot out to the outside hospital to get patched up because of, you know, a serious gun wound or something like that. That's when they started to bring it to the warden and to some of the other higher ups in the chain of command, that, hey, what you guys are doing is wrong. You guys are putting former gang members, I mean, righteous rivals out there together on the yard. And, you know, what's happening is it's going to end up it's going to fall back on the whole department. We're all going to end up getting in trouble over here. At some point, the feds are going to step in, or Sacramento's going to step in and say, what the fuck's going on over here? You guys the death rate over here is off the chains. So, you know, they started bringing this to the warden, but it fell on deaf ears. You know, the only thing that they accomplished by bringing it to the warden and by bringing it to some of the others higher up in the chain was, one, they basically let them know that these were two guys that weren't marching to the same beat, and they weren't on the home team. So, you know, and the other thing is that they exposed themselves and made themselves targets. Hey, we need to watch out for these dudes because they're talking that talk and they're not in agreement with everything that we got going on here. So that's the only thing that they accomplished. And I believe that, you know, I seen the cases as they played out. I seen a couple documentaries where Caruso talked about it, and, you know, they became targets. they became targets for retaliation. And I think when they brought it up to the top, they realized it was falling on deaf ears and that nothing was being done about it. The warden didn't implement any kind of changes. It was like, you know what, we're following policy and that's it. Done. It is what it is. So, you know, when these guys realized that they were being shut down and that basically everything that they were saying was falling on deaf ears, they felt like they had to do something else to stop it themselves. They had to take more of a proactive approach. And eventually that's what they would do. But what made these officers different from a lot of the other officers there was that they basically, because they were former military guys, they were former Marine guys, that they had you know, superior comprehension on ethical on some of the unethical practices dealing specifically with firearms, talking about, you know, things like shooting people that, you know, being out there. So the military has training. It's what's called, you know, comprehension of unethical firearms practices, things that you're not supposed to do, how you're supposed to use a gun, how you're not supposed to use a gun, how you're not supposed to use it as a weapon on civilians and things like that. So they took that training serious, obviously. And I think that right there kind of spilled over into what was going on in Corcoran. You know, you had inmates that were going out, and because of their beliefs, because of their gang beliefs and the things that they believed in, they were being forced to go out to a yard and not only fight, and that's bad enough right there, but because of that, then they were also being slaughtered out there. They were being killed for believing in what they believed in. And it depends on how you look at it, man. You can look at it, you know, in a real negative way. Fuck them, they're gang members. Who gives a fuck? Or you can look at them as, you know what, hey, these guys, a lot of them grew up in poverty. A lot of them grew up in the hood. They grew into gangs because that's all they knew. From the time they were in diapers, that's literally all they knew. They were in the trenches from a very young age, and they grew into it because from generation to generation, that's how it goes. You guys know families. We all have homeboys or families that are from the neighborhood that the whole fucking family's involved. I'm talking about everybody: mother, father, brother, aunt, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, the fucking kids, everybody, cousin, niece, uncle, nephew. They're all involved. Everybody, though, and they all believe in the hood. This is something that they truly believe in. So whether you look at them as they're just gang members and fuck them, you know, this is what they believe in, they deserve to die, or whether you look at them as like, hey, they're victims in this cycle that they grew up in. It's just, it depends on how you think. But bottom line is, these two guys felt like these guys that were dying, they were being slaughtered, they were being killed. And Caruso even went as far as to say that there was one shooting over there that happened that, as a matter of fact, this was on a norteño. This was on a norteño, and it was the homeboy, I believe it was Toro, Jesse Martinez. I might be wrong, though. Somebody else dropped his name in the comments, and he was somebody that went out there, was going out to the yard, he was fighting, he was putting it down. Big guy, he was a C, and the one time he went out, he got into it with the Sureño, knocked the Sureño down. Basically, the fight was over. He turned around, started to walk away, and he got shot in the back. It was a straight homicide. And he talked about that. He was like, I seen the footage. This was a straight homicide. If that would have been my fucking kid, if that would have been my son, I would have demanded that these guys be brought up on murder charges. It was a homicide. This guy was, he posed no threat. Even the Sureño that was fighting with him had basically said the fight was over. He wasn't threatening me. He was no threat. He was walking away and he got shot in the back. That's foul, man. So, you know, he said that when he seen that, it was just like, this is taken to another level now. That was a straight murder right there. That was somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's kid. So, he said for that particular one right there, it pushed him over the top. And I know I'm putting the carriage before the horse right now, and I'm going forward in this, but when the actual case would later happen, and they talked about that incident right there, and they went through so there was like 7 or 8 murders that happened over there in Corcoran, guys that got shot when they were fighting, and they literally went through the fight from beginning to end, and I'm talking like every fucking second. At 0.121, this individual walked over this way. At 0.022, he started to veer left. At they dissected it and analyzed every one of those fights. And when it came to that particular fight that I'm talking about with the Jesse Martinez, it was crazy, man. It was crazy because it's like they weren't even talking about that fight. They were talking about another fight. The judge, unfortunately, that presided over that case was obviously in cahoots. He was with the cops that got indicted, and it was just a shit show. It was a circus, man. They were allowed, you guys know how it goes. Sometimes you got judges that will hold their nuts and will do the right thing. And then you have other judges that whenever you got cops that go up there, they get preferential treatment. Bad cops. I'm not talking about good cops. I'm talking about bad cops. They get preferential treatment, and it's slated to where they're going to get a hung jury, or they're going to get acquitted, or they're going to walk out free, straight up. And that's what ended up happening. That's what it was. So anyway, like I was saying, these guys had superior comprehension of unethical weapons handling, and from the Marines, and that right there carried over to them being employed with the California Department of Corrections, and that's one of the reasons why they started to push so hard to stop this. Riggs is, from what I remember, him and Caruso both went to the warden and tried to get him to stop everything that was happening over there. Separate these guys, give them their own yard. This will stop the bloodshed. It'll stop the killing. There's no reason why we need to do this. They're not getting yard anyway. You'll get 2 or 3 guys that will go out, they'll fight, somebody gets killed, and then we're shutting the yard down for the rest of the day. It's making no sense. The way that we're setting this up, the only ones that are benefiting from this are the guys that are betting. So again, it fell on deaf ears. The warden didn't do shit about it, but let some of the other people that were in cahoots with him know that, watch these motherfuckers, and they did become targets of retaliation, which I'm going to get into before the end of this video. So one of the other, well, you can say that this was the one that really broke the straw on the camel's back, is there. So there was another fight with an Africano by the name of Preston Tate, and he went out. It was him, his celly, and 2 Southsiders. It was a 2-on-2. They went out there. They did their thing. They got him up. They were fighting. Preston Tate took a bullet to the head. They killed him out there on the yard. That was another messy ass video. If you guys have seen it, the dude got straight. They didn't need to take lethal force against him. There was no threat. He didn't have a weapon in his hand. He wasn't kicking the dude in his head. They were all standing on their feet. So it was just a physical altercation. But yet this officer took a headshot instead of a leg shot or a less lethal area on his body. He took a headshot. So, when that happened, Caruso was like, you know what? Fuck this shit. This is it's not getting no better. Nothing's being done about it. So that's when he took it upon himself to be more proactive. And what he started to do was he started to record some of these fights on his cell phone. He started to record some of the officers that were escorting people to the yard, the ones that were always involved. He was taking video of all the officers that were up in the towers, all congregated up there, stuck on the window, watching the fight, like they were at like they were in fucking Caesar's Palace somewhere watching a Mayweather fight. That's what they were doing. So he was getting all this video evidence, and you know, he was putting it away because he was basically getting himself ready to take it and present it to the FBI. It even went as far as getting audio tapes of, you know, him going to the warden and again making a strong push to get it shut down, and then hearing the warden's resistance. Like, you know, we're just following some of the policies that have been handed down from Sacramento. We're going to continue doing what we do here, and you know, that's basically what it was. So the other thing that Caruso did, being that he was a sergeant, well, I believe I already mentioned this, but while he was working, he tried to stop known rivals from getting put on the same tier in close proximity to each other, because the tier that dictated a lot of like who's going to fight who, and a lot of it was strategically done. If you guys go back in some of the previous episodes that I talked about it, the tier was like, that was the classroom. That was, these are the everybody that was on your tier, those were the participants. Those were the ones that you were going to end up getting into it with. Now, they could have just made designated buildings for Northerners and designated other buildings for Sureños and NF members, Mexican Mafia members, Aryan Brotherhood members, or they could have, at any time they could have stopped it, but they didn't want to stop it. You know, it was fun. I mean, what else can I say, man? It made the workday go by fast. Like, some of you like to watch YouTube videos and it helps you pass the day. Well, that was their way of passing the day. That was their way of passing 12 hours, by putting these guys out there, watching them fight, a lot of them recording the videos, taking them home, showing them to you know, their friends and other people. That's how they passed their time. So, you know, nobody wanted it to stop. Plus, like I said, I've said it over and over, but they had a big gambling thing going on, and this was like, you know, their little small lottery and shit, man. You know, from what I had heard, they were betting hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and their standout fighters, you know, those are the ones they were putting big money on. So it was what it was. Now, there were like, I want to say there was I think it was 7 officers that ended up getting indicted. And I want to say it was John Vaughn, Jerry Arvisu, there was a Lieutenant Douglas Martin, Christopher Bethea, Timothy Dickinson, Raul Tavares, and there was another lieutenant, Truman Jennings. Those were the ones that got indicted. So when Caruso and Riggs took this to the FBI, they took it to the FBI, they took all these videos, they basically went over there, they contacted somebody, and, you know, they laid it all out. They laid the whole case out, and that's when the FBI came in. They got involved. There was a huge investigation. All of us that were involved in the Corcoran SHU wars at some point in time, whether it was while you were in Corcoran or whether it was when you were out on parole at some point. I was already out. I was out, gone from Corcoran. I had already done my time. I was out, and I got contacted. But at some point, you would get contacted by some of the attorneys that were litigating the case, and they wanted to know, like, what happened while you were there? What did you see? And I was at that time, I'm out. I didn't want to get involved. Hey, I was there. Whatever you guys see on the 115s, that's what happened. As far as anything else, I don't care to be involved. I'm not going to be involved. I'm not giving up no statements. I'm not saying nothing that can be put in an affidavit, nothing like that. It was something that I went through. I'm no longer there. And it was as simple as that. A lot of dudes got interviewed that were there. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds. everybody that went through there, everybody that got written up basically was somebody that was interviewed. And it happened at different points in time. So the ending result was eventually, years later, it still took time. The SHU was shut down as far as the big yards. So they shut all the big yards down, and they brought in a bunch of dog cages, dog kennels, whatever you guys want to call them, individual cages, and there was no longer any group yard. The case went to court. There was a criminal trial, and these guys got acquitted. It was bullshit. You know how it goes when there's a case like this, where I'm gonna tell you like this. What is it called? The CDC. That union is probably one of the strongest unions in the country. The correctional officer union, whatever it's called, that union is seriously strong. I knew that these guys were gonna get, I knew that they were gonna get acquitted. I knew that none of them were gonna get found guilty. They weren't gonna send them to prison. And that's exactly what happened. All 7 of them got acquitted. At the most, like, they got slapped in the hand. Maybe they got maybe they were reprimanded or something like that. But as far as criminal culpability or criminal, to be held answer for what they did, they walked away scot-free. Some of them, I want to say some of them still kept their jobs. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember, but I know that nothing happened to them. As far as the 2 individuals that, Riggs and Caruso, the 2 individuals that felt like they did a good thing, and they probably did. They probably saved a lot of lives. They were retaliated against to the point where they almost had to go into seclusion. They had to move. Their houses were vandalized. They were firebombed. At some point, other people were trying to run them off the road. It got so bad that they feared for their lives, and they ended up moving, and that's basically how it ended. Now Corcoran, the big yards, they're still there. I would end up going back through Corcoran years later, and now, like I said, they had these dog runs or these dog kennels, whatever you guys want to call them, and their individual yards. However, I still got to go out to the big yard a couple times while I was there. So what they'll do is the yards are still functional. So they'll run the yards, they'll run out all the kennels, they'll fill them all up. And then, like, the last 2 people that go to yard, sometimes it might end on you, sometimes it might not. But if you were like the last 2 that they ran to the yard, they put you out there on the big yard. So basically, you'd be able to go out there and reminisce. I remember coming out here to this yard when it was super active. And, I went out there and got to, reflect back on some of the memories, man. And when you go out there on those yards and you really get a chance to go out there and walk around and look around, you see nothing but big ass fucking bullet holes in the walls. I'm dead serious. In the back, you see big chunks of concrete blown out the walls all over, like all around the yard. I had a chance to really walk around and look at the walls, and there's a lot of bullets that ended up flying on those yards, and the evidence is out there. For those of you that have been out there, I'm sure there's a lot of you that might be watching that went out there and seen. You guys know what I'm talking about. But that's basically what happened during the Corcoran SHU wars. Again, I can't emphasize enough how many people it broke. It broke a lot of individuals, not just norteños, not just sureños, not just Woods, Africanos. It separated the true believers from the fakes. Those that were just in it, for the title, for a little bit of the, the prestige or whatever reason they were in it for, that weren't really true believers. that the Corcoran SHU war was a good way of weeding those guys out, because they would definitely get weeded out, and they did get weeded out. A lot of them went there. Some of them from the gate, they just, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not going out. Especially a lot of them that ended up over there by themselves, that didn't have, enough balls to go out by yourself and do what you had to do what you signed up to do. They just lock it up. Some of them locked it up and thought that nobody heard about it. Some of them, some guys would lock it up and they come through there for a couple months and they'd end up paroling. But you got other people there that are active, Sureños, Woods, and however the information got out, it could have got out through Sureño or Wood. Hey, you had a homeboy here, Tiny, from wherever. What was he doing? Oh, he stayed in his cell. He never came out. What? You know what I mean? Then you run into him again later, and he's still out. He's on a yard in Quentin, trying to slide through, and so there was a lot of stuff that happened because of Corcoran. A lot of the leadership, like I said, got lucky and didn't have to go through Corcoran, and I'm sure that they're glad they did it. There's a lot of us that went through it, and I'm not saying that anybody deserves any special brownie points or deserves any kind of special recognition, but it should be at least acknowledged that those were some trying times. The SHU wars, it showed you who the cream of the crop was. And for those that went out, both friend and foe, I salute them. I salute them. I was there. I know how it was. I know how it weighed on you. I knew how easy it was for you to allow yourself to get weak if you were weak. So mentally, physically, it tested you. It tested your will. That's that's pretty much my spill on the Corcoran SHU wars. If there's other things that come up throughout time, I'll talk about it, but it'd be redundant at this point. I think I don't remember how many episodes exactly, 5 or 6 episodes. I broke it down for you guys and drug it out as much as I could. But for me to keep talking about it, it'd be redundant. I like to hear other people's experiences, what they did, how guys that are watching this, if you have your experiences, if you care to talk about them and you want to be anonymous, we can make it happen. In every way, from changing your voice to, we could either do it to where you could come on as an interview if you don't mind being seen, or you can come on and remain anonymous, or we can do it through a phone call. We can change your voice. We can blacken out the screen. There's a lot of different ways, but I would like for other people to come on and talk about how Corcoran affected them mentally, physically, in every way. So with that being said, I think this is probably a good place to close off this episode right here. There's nothing else that I can really talk about. If there's something that you guys want me to elaborate on, if there's something that I just kind of skimmed over and you want to hear more about it, throw it in the comments. Throw it in the comments, and maybe I'll do a follow-up, or I'll take one of these next episodes and make a little segment to where I respond to it. Or if it's something that I feel like is better, that would be betterly addressed in a Q&A, I'll do it that way. Either way, though, whatever you guys want to hear more about, drop them in the comments. But this is episode 37 of Inner Demons. Again, I know it took a while to get out. I'm going to try to bust out as many episodes as I can on Inner Demons and war stories. You guys remember when I got sick for a minute and then I came in and I went hard? Well, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to try to start dropping them as much as I can. But sometimes, man, you guys got to understand that there's life outside of YouTube. Sometimes you have family tragedies. sometimes that there's things, dealing with family or whatever it is that takes away from the time that I would normally spend on creating content. So just understand that if there's ever a time that where a week goes by or something, that's usually what it is. And as far as those of you that have been leaving positive comments, again, kudos to all you guys, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate the constructive criticism. I embrace all that. But for those of you that continuously show your ass and try to tell me how to talk or what to say or what you don't want to hear, I'm not going to entertain it. If you don't like it, it's as simple as spin off, man. Go watch somebody else. There's plenty of other channels on YouTube, but you're not going to dictate shit that I do on this channel. You're a faceless nobody, you know what I mean? And you're barking behind a keyboard, and I ain't trying to hear that shit. Anyways, for those of you that appreciate the content, it's your boy B. This episode 37 of Inner Demons. 38. I'm going to try to get it out within the next day or two, but I'm going to hit you guys with some war stories right now. With that being said, it's your boy B, and I'm out.